Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunday morning celebration.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I've been cogitating on this talk for a long time. I got a lot to say, so I'm going to get going. And before I jump into the subject of this talk, I want to revisit a couple of the talks that I've done earlier and explain how those talks have helped me through one of the most difficult times. Those subjects have helped me through one of the most difficult times in my life. The first talk I did here was after I'd come back from my trip to Central America, to Peru and Ecuador, and I talked about allowing, about how, on this trip I was able to just be in this great state of allowing, recognizing that everything is God. Everything that's happening to us on a moment-to-moment basis is an interaction spirit with our spirit. And that being in this state of allowing, just recognizing that and allowing spirit to come in, just is a magical state of being. To me, it's more than an attitude. It's a state of being. It's a state of acceptance. It's a state of recognizing that we're interacting with spirit on every minute and letting that happen. And on this trip, because especially when you're traveling, because you don't have all these expectations about what's going to happen, everything is new coming at you, and so it's much easier to be in this state. And so anyway, I talked about that, and to me that's just an incredible practice and state of being to be in on a day-to-day basis, and I work on that. And then the next talk I talked about was, what happens when what's coming at you is not what you want, and you're resisting it. And I talked about surrender and how surrender is so important to be able to, to let in and to give up our resistance, and how just going before God when you're in pain or fear or anger or whatever you're feeling, and feel those feelings and then offer them up to God and surrender them to God and allow that to just allow you to get back into a place of acceptance and allowing, and to just free yourself of those emotions, even good emotions. I mean, even on good days, I go in and surrender my joy to God and acknowledge that that's coming from God, and it's again, a tremendous practice and understanding that, today this moment is all we have. We can't change the past, and we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And being in a state of allowing and surrender in this moment is the most we can do to be present and accepting of what's happening right now. So these practices are something, these attitudes are something I really put a lot of energy into and try and hold on to. And earlier this year, I had this experience that was, a truly life-changing, traumatic experience. And February 21st, I was driving with my friend in a car in Orange in his 1968 Mercury Cougar XR7 classic car. And we were cruising down the road, and I was coming up to this intersection, and there was a light, and the light was green, and I was proceeding through the intersection and all in the right-hand lane, and all of a sudden this guy pulled out from the right in front of me, and I smashed right into the side of his car, going about 35 or 40. Could barely hit the brakes. And the guy that I was riding with, I was driving, my friend Hartley was sitting next to me. And Hartley is a guy that my wife, Shima, met in elementary school. He was this kind of weird guy that she befriended, and throughout the years, we would call Hartley up once in a while and take him to dinner. And, every year or so, we call Hartley up and take him to dinner. And in 2007, he lived with his parents his entire life. And he was an only child. His parents were only children. And in 2007, his mom died, and we helped him sell his parents' house in Newport and he ended up living in a hotel in Harbor Boulevard. And in 2014, he had a health crisis, and he ended up in the hospital. And at one point they were thinking of doing a heart transplant, and they ended up doing 3 stents. And at that time, we realized he needed more help. We put together a trust and became his healthcare POA and his power of attorney and all those kinds of things. And I just retired, and I had the time to help him a little bit more. And so since 2014, I was take Hartley to lunch once a week. I would take him to doctor appointments and handle his medications, help him with his medications. And he had a whole number of health crises during that time. He ended up in the hospital several times, had a detached retina and a bunch of things that happened. And I got him diagnosed. He was bipolar and autistic, which explained a lot of his behaviors and his weirdness and stuff like that. But he had like a savant memory that he could remember everything, and he would get really into, he was really into old cars and World War II planes and boats and battles, and he would go on and on about things like that. So anyway, and he was really into this car was the car that his dad had, and he was really into this car. And we had just gotten the carburetor rebuilt, and we're driving down the road, just digging on how cool the car was driving and everything when this accident happened. And he had been living in a senior assisted living facility for the last 5 years, and he was, his depression had him laying in bed most of the day, things like that. So when this accident happened, we're driving along the road one minute, enjoying everything, and literally 2 seconds later, I smash into this guy, the car spins around, I'm looking at the street down from which we came, going, well, that was my past, and this is my present, and this is what I'm dealing with. And, so right away I was like, wow, okay, I got to accept this. And, the next few minutes was just, a flurry of paramedics and police and ambulance ride and all that kind of stuff. And I went forward into the car only had lap belts, so I went forward into the steering wheel. In the end, I broke a bone in my hand, and I injured my lower back, which kept me in bed for a couple of weeks. But Hartley went all the way forward and hit the front windshield and got much more serious injuries. He ended up at UCI Medical. I went to OC Global, which is weird twist of fate. Anyway, his injuries were serious, but they would be survivable for a normal person. He had 3 fractures in his back. His sacrum had been broke loose from his spine, from his pelvis. And he had internal bleeding, so he had a surgery for that, couple of surgeries. And as his healthcare POA, I was getting these calls from the doctors. We need to do this procedure, we need to do that procedure, as I'm in the hospital or laying in bed at home trying to recover and all of this. And 2 weeks into it, the police report came back from the accident that said that I ran the red light. And 2 weeks, then shortly after that, Hartley developed sepsis, and he went into multi-organ failure. And almost 4 weeks from the accident, Shima and I went to the hospital, and they removed the life support stuff, and Hartley passed. And shortly after that, then because when a fatality occurs in a traffic accident, the police have to do a multi-level investigation. So I had to have police came to my house and investigated. The investigating officer interviewed me about my relationship with Hartley and all that kind of stuff. So dealing with this, using these techniques, I credit these techniques of staying in the moment, of allowing, even when it's not what you want, and of surrendering your pain and your guilt and your fear and your anger, and not spinning out into the past or the future, and staying with what's in front of you in the moment, has just tremendously helped me get through this trauma and I'm not through it at all. I'm still healing. I mean, talking about it now is part of my healing, but I feel like I'm doing as well as anybody could, and I'm getting through this, and it's an amazing trauma, but it's also an amazing blessing. This officer that came to my house, I wasn't worried, do I need to get a lawyer? Do I need, all this stuff? And he wanted to know, what's your relationship with Hartley? And what did you, and I explained all this stuff to him. I explained, what was happening in the moments leading up to the accident. And he said, look, they call these things accidents for a reason. This was an accident. He ended up comforting me. He says, I deal with all kinds of accidents where there's drunk driving and all kinds of problems. He goes, this was a pure accident, and you shouldn't hold this against yourself, and you don't have anything to worry about here. And he has to submit his report to the DA, who has still got a year to review it. But he said, don't worry about it, And so it was like, I felt like his voice was like the voice of God speaking to me. That this guy, who's a gnarled police investigator, who all he does is investigate traffic fatality accidents, said all these wonderful, comforting things to me, my main point here is that these techniques are incredibly powerful. It's a way of being, it's a way of living that can protect you, that can help you move forward and see the worst in life, or the best in what life has to bring to you. So, let me shift from that to the subject of my talk. Comfort of complacency, Sattvas or Tamas. Where are we really at? We've all heard about Maya. We've all been studying, learning about Maya our whole life. We've all been dealing with Maya our whole life. This force of God that is to keep us mired in delusion, in misrepresentation, and keep us, covered in mud and not getting through to God and to Spirit and to all of that. And God, in His infinite wisdom, has given us each a personal agent of Maya. It's called our ego. And we have this personal agent to implement Maya in our life and to keep us mired. And, one of the key forces of this, I think, is complacency. It's all easy to see when somebody's doing something, hurting somebody else or lying or doing some gross thing. It's easy to see that out as Maya. But I think complacency, especially as we move forward on the path, our intention is to reach towards God and to have this experience, and to become, instruments of Spirit. But our ego is not going to lay down. Our ego is not going to just go, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do that. Our ego is there trying to subvert us and to, slightly just get us off this way a little bit and a little bit off this way, a little bit off that way. Just, that's enough. You don't need to go that far. It's this kind of subtle thing that I think, especially as we move down the path, that gets really subversive and really hard to recognize. And we've all seen examples of people who were high people on the path, who clearly had deep spiritual experience, who just went sideways. And I'm sure in their thinking, they thought that God was meaning them to go that way. They thought they were acting in what God wanted them to do. And it was, ego and it was complacency, and it was Maya at its best, working in the subtlest ways as we get closer to spirit. And, I think that this is something, I'm just trying to bring this to everybody's awareness, that you can look at, all of us can look at our lives and say, where is this complacency? Where is this Thomas acting on us? Thomas Guna just, lay in bed all day. Okay, that's an obvious Thomas Guna thing when you need something, got something to do or whatever. But I think there's lots of subtle aspects of Thomas just kind of working on us and going, yeah, that's good enough for today, or, well, I don't need to do that, and just working on us little bit by little bit. And we really need to be aware of those things and work on them. And wow, I'm making really good time here. Looking at the clock, well, I spent a lot of time. And so, I think everybody can look at those things. Ramakrishnanaji was talking to us recently, and he mentioned that he was reading some stuff from Yogananda, and Yogananda said that the entire path can be summed up as the subjugation of the ego to God's will. So you take all of these scriptures and all of the Bhagavad Gita and all of these books, and you can sum it up to the subjugation of our ego to God's will. But our ego is not going to lie down and give up. And it's going to work on us, and it's going to subvert. And we, have to look at that and be aware of that. One of the things that I was remembering is how comfortable are you in what's going on in your life? How comfortable are you in your relationship with God? How comfortable are you in your sadhana that you're doing? How comfortable are you with your progress, your spiritual progress? Because, if we're making progress, if we're progressing in our path, then our ego is changing and is dealing with things, then maybe it shouldn't feel so comfortable. Because things are shifting under us. And our sense of identity is shifting to become more spiritual. But how comfortable are we? How comfortable are we in our daily sadhana? Are we in a rut? Are we doing the same thing we've been doing for 30, 40, 50 years? I think it's easy to get in that kind of situation, to become comfortable, to become complacent, to accept where we're at, accept what we're doing, and accept where we're going. And is that really where the best we can do? Is there, what can we shake up? What can we examine to look at where we can change what we're doing? Well, wow. I don't know that I have a lot more to say. We have a good amount of time now that we can meditate. I wanted to have a good time to meditate. And I think I've said everything I can say. All of us can look at what's going on within us and think about these ideas. Be aware of complacency, be aware of settling, be aware of our ego working on us in dirty little subversive ways. And, what can we do to shake up the tree? What can we do to not accept to not accept where I'm at and strive for more. Go beyond. That's what Guruji always says. There's always more. Always go beyond. So, let's have a meditation together.
Would you like me to bring us out?
Sure. Yeah. Jai Guru. Jai Guru. I had three things to talk about, and I forgot one. In June, Shiva and I went on a vacation after all this trauma and turmoil. I've had 2 knee replacements this last year and everything. And we visited some friends in Morro Bay, and then we spent 3 days in Carmel together. And we had a personal retreat at Mount Madonna, and then we went to a week-long spiritual renewal week retreat at Ananda in Nevada City, outside Nevada City. And it was really interesting and wonderful to hang out in both of those places and see those communities. And both of those communities have, lost their leaders. And I was happy to see that they're both thriving, doing very well. When we were last at Ananda before COVID, they were talking about, aging population and not a lot of new people coming in and worried about the future and stuff. And they did a big prayer thing and were able to turn that around. And there's quite a few young people in their organization now. The people running things have been replaced with younger people. And they're doing very well. And my big takeaway from those both of those experiences was in both of those are spiritual communities that started about the same time we did, and both of their leaders really stressed the need for spiritual community, the importance of spiritual community, and also the importance of selfless service. Yogananda said that if you're doing a lot of meditation and sadhana and you're not doing selfless service, that the meditation can actually strengthen your ego. And that by doing selfless service is a way it's part of your sadhana, it's part of growth on the spiritual path. And obviously at Ananda, they have lots of people doing all kinds of service in every which way, running that organization. They have, besides their community on the mountain, they have thriving communities in Seattle, in Sacramento, Palo Alto, Seattle, and Oakland, where they have buildings where they have a whole bunch of people live there, and they have a temple, and they get together and have weekly meals together in each of those communities. They meditate together. They have Sunday services together. All of that. And what that made me realize is the importance of this community for me and for all of us. We are a strong spiritual community. And we're facing a lot of the challenges that they had in terms of aging and all that kind of stuff. But, I think that, coming back to my thing about complacency, I feel like complacency is kind of eking its way into our organization. And I am interested in revitalizing us as a community and getting us, stronger. And there's no reason why this community is going to wither and die as soon as, we're without a leader. And so to that end, Shima and I would like to host a potluck at our house on Saturday the 30th at 6 p.m. of this month, because we've got all these other swamis and everything. And I'm going to make the main course, and anybody who feels like it can bring something. If you can't, or you don't feel like it, don't bring something, just come. And the conversation is going to be about what we can do to strengthen our community and to revitalize our community. And Shima has some ideas she's already thought up that she wants to discuss, and I want to invite everybody to be there. So that's it. See you on the 30th, okay? Ciao.